welcome into the Bear Down Buzz podcast. Myself, Eli Grimes, joining you with Joe and Isaac back from vacation. Isaac, just for the listeners, tell us how your vacation went, man.
It was awesome. Went to Madrid, Barcelona, and Spain. I was there for 10 days. It was a nice little just get away from everything type of trip. A lot of drinking. So that was fun, but glad to be back and ready to discuss some Bears topics with you guys. Unfortunately, it's not going to be all good today, but hopefully next week it'll be a little better. But yeah, it was a good trip overall.
Yeah, that does help us kind of segue. You had a good trip. The Bears have not fared so well in the past few weeks, but uh, obviously, just to recollect, a week one win over the Titans and a week two loss that was quite, let's just say, not up to par for what we expected against the Texans. A loss on Sunday Night Football there in Houston. So, Joe, I will start with you. What were your thoughts on this loss to the Houston Texans and CJ Stroud on Sunday Night Football last night?
So I think the defense played really well. They played in the first half. it- They were able to stop the run very well, which was nice because Joe Mixon going in this game had the best for week one of any running back. So that needed to be done for sure. They were able to get it done. Other than that, nothing else looked good. The offense, I mean, Caleb Williams looked better for sure. The offensive line did not look good. The play calling was not great. Uh, they ran a bunch of short stuff and a bunch of screens, just like Luke Getty did last year. The short stuff, when it worked, it was fine, but a lot of the time it didn't work. Didn't look good like good offense. They couldn't run the ball. The offensive line was getting blown back every single run. There was no lanes, and then they allowed 7 sacks and 10 pressures, which you can't win like that, even if Caleb is playing better. Caleb missed a couple deep throws again, which you don't like to see. You need him to hit those. He also missed a couple other throws that he just can't miss. Like when I say miss, like the receivers were open and he just chose not to throw to them, which isn't good. Uh, and then he also threw a couple picks. He threw three picks, which he should have really had three. He got lucky that one was taken back because of a holding on Cole Kmet, which who knows if he actually knew it happened? I don't think he knew it happened until the flag happened. I just think he got lucky and it got bailed out. But the other two picks weren't good throws either. He missed, like I said, he missed a throw. He missed a couple throws, but one of them was to DJ Moore in the fourth on like a comeback, not a comeback, but like a back shoulder throw that, you know, most quarterbacks, not most quarterbacks, but the elite level quarterbacks can hit. And we think that Caleb can be one of those guys. And I know it's his first two games, and that comes with time. But you should really like to see him throw throw a better ball. He threw it in front of him. He threw it behind him, like he had to come back to get the ball instead of throwing it to where it needed to be. And then Rome had a bad drop in the end zone that wasn't great uh, in the second quarter. But then his first passing touchdown. Uh, I mean, he should have had a passing touchdown last week with Keenan Allen, but Keenan dropped it. Another dropped touchdown. You can argue that it was a bad throw, but we drafted Rome at number 9 for a reason. You're supposed to be able to go up, climb the ladder, and catch that ball, no matter what. Catch that ball. We drafted you for a reason. That's the reason. I know he was hurt. I know he came into the game hurt and he played injured, but he looked pretty good when he actually got the ball, which wasn't a lot. He got two passes. He caught two passes. One was on the final drive of the game, and he was able to break that out for like 25, 20, I think it was 27 yards. Some people were saying maybe if he was 100% healthy, it might have went for further. Maybe he doesn't have that year since he's the MCL sprain. But yeah, uh, it's long-winded, but basically, I thought is defense great, offense not so much.
All right, now, and Isaac, give me your thoughts on the Sunday Night Football matchup against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to let everyone know that, it's okay to panic a little bit. It's okay to have these type of games, but it is week two. It's only been the second week. You know, and a lot of fans are really worried about Caleb Williams, which is, to be fair, I mean, he didn't have the best game, but he did have an improving game from last year or last game. And, you know, the offensive line is probably one of the most critical points that we need to address as a team because it's the same problem like year after year, and it's always been the interior three. Yes, Nate Davis is, getting around 10 million a year, but at what point do we step back and say, okay, it's time for you to go to the bench. We don't care if you're healthy. We need to get someone in that's gonna, do a better job at protecting Caleb Williams. And I think that Matt Pryor during the preseason was doing a really good job. And sometimes all you need is a little change like that to really get the offense going. And unfortunately for the Bears, the offense wasn't rolling on Sunday. We really wanted to see them run the ball more, and they did try to do it, so I'll give them that, but it just wasn't working. And it's just crazy to me how after all these years with polls, he still didn't really address the interior offensive line, especially the center position. And for someone like I was looking today at the Lucas Patrick when he got, I think he was like the highest graded player on the Saints when they played the Cowboys, and I mean it's ridiculous. Like he wasn't the best, but I mean to go to another team and start doing really well is crazy. And at what point do we start to say, okay, maybe it's not the players, maybe it's the offensive line coach, Chris Morgan. Like he's been here for 3 seasons. Haven't really seen the type of like offensive line that people are saying, like, he's like an offensive line guru or something like that, and it really hasn't panned out yet. So just it's frustrating to see Caleb get pressured on like 81% of his dropbacks. It really is, but at one point, I don't know. I just hopefully it's better next week against the Colts. I know DeForest Buckner is out, so we are playing a slightly less talented defensive line, and we'll see. Another aspect I want to get into is DJ Moore. I really like DJ Moore. Like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like he was visibly frustrated throughout the game, and he was showing it like pretty much like every time he was on camera, he was upset. He was, he wasn't really throwing a tantrum, but at the same time, like, I don't know what's in his mind, like if he's really mad at Caleb Williams. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's not. I don't think he was, like saying really mad at him, but like I hope Moore realizes that it's only Caleb's second game. We played a really good Houston Texans team and only lost by 6. Like it's crazy. If you told me that the Bears only lost by 6 and I didn't watch the game, I would be super happy about it. It just happens to be that the offense was really bad and the defense was really good, but we'll see. Hopefully more, kind of just this isn't going to become a big issue with him in the future. I don't think he's that type of diva player like Chase that's going to demand the ball or get mad or call out his quarterback or anything like that, but we'll see. What about you, Eli? What do you think about the game?
So you bring up a lot of great points, and I want to circle back on the offensive line just simply because you bringing up the offensive line coach, Chris Morgan, I think is something that, as you kind of mentioned, Lucas Patrick had a great week with New Orleans. I remember last year Sam Mustipher had some decent games in place. I know I don't want to circle back on. I don't even want to say his name. That's how bad it was. But these players that were bad with Chicago, mainly on the offensive line, went to other teams, typically better franchises than the Chicago Bears, and found early success with their new squad. So I think that is something that the Bears need to take a long, hard look at, because this offensive line is not just playing bad, they're playing awful simply because we're seeing, and we saw it last night, and several people have brought it up, so it's not a new point by any means, but the Bears faced a 5-man front with 5-man protection, and they were struggling with their blocks. Coleman Shelton has been a point of emphasis on Bears Twitter, and everybody's discussing how bad he's played. Tevin Jenkins seemingly is having a regression period, which I don't think any of us really expected. Darnell Wright seems to be a penalty machine through 2 weeks, and don't get anyone started on Nate Davis. I would argue that Braxton Jones has been our best offensive lineman through 2 weeks, which, again, I don't think is something that many people saw coming. But he's also struggled at times. So really, there's no cohesion right now on that unit. Going into the season, I think a lot of us thought that there was going to be some level of it, whether that was Nate Davis or Ryan Bates at right guard. Some of us kind of thought that some of us thought that Bates might have that right guard spot, but then he got injured. So that kind of got us off to the wrong start. So Davis was penciled in there and hasn't played well. And again, we're struggling against non-blitzing teams that are just having simple 5-man pressure, and we're just missing assignments that other teams don't normally struggle with. And we're getting record pressures, as we saw. Everyone saw the stat that Caleb was pressured on almost all of his dropbacks throughout that game last night. And that's just not what you want for a rookie quarterback that's trying to find his way in this league. And to kind of segue into Caleb Williams, I don't really think, and Joe also brought it up, he didn't have a great game last night, but he started off like 6 for 7, and he was getting the ball out quick and on time, something that he struggled with in college. So regardless of the outcome of last night and what the offense looked like, he didn't look completely lost. Now, again, Joe mentioned it as well. There were some missed throws and just some bad play calling throughout that matchup. But early on, he looked as though he took a massive jump from week 1 to week 2, which, again, is all that Bears fans kind of wanted. But the fact that, and Isaac, again, you brought this up, we only lost by 6 to a team that almost went to the Super Bowl last year. They were well on their way and just faced a really good Ravens squad in that playoff matchup. But I think that team has Super Bowl aspirations this year. And for the Bears defense to only allow 19 points to that squad, and again, we'll get back to Caleb Williams, but we've seen the progression through 2 weeks, and I only think he's going to get better. So it's just a matter of, we've played 2 pretty good defenses so far. So I think this fan base kind of needs to just take a deep breath, in the words of a famous Packers quarterback that shall not be named. 5 letters, RELAX, relax. I think it's going to be okay. There are several things to worry about so far, but it is still early on. And again, we've played 2 really good defenses, but I think we're going to be okay. So Joe, do you have any other thoughts?
Not generally, but I do want to pose a question to you guys. On a scale of 1 to 10, let's start with, how worried are you guys about the offensive play calling after these past 2 weeks?
Isaac, I'll give this one to you. Yep.
Yeah. For the offensive play calling, it was pretty concerning last game against the Texans. I feel like Waldron didn't really have a good feel for the game. He was just kind of calling a bunch of screens, dump offs, and not really giving Caleb an opportunity to just throw the ball downfield or any exotic plays to open up the run game. But I mean, it's only week 2, and Waldron seems like the type of guy that he'll be able to acknowledge his weaknesses, unlike Luke Getsy when he was just saying, "Oh, it's blah blah blah, it's going well." So I would say maybe a 5, because it is concerning. We did want to see changes on the offensive play calling, but at the same time, it's pretty early. So I'll give Waldron the benefit of the doubt. What about you, Eli?
Yeah, I think I'm probably in that range as well. Maybe a 6. I'll take it up a tad from you, just simply because the usage rate for certain players is kind of alarming. But again, we're in 2 weeks with a new offense, so we've got to have a little bit of patience. But Joe and I talked about this in our last episode. Our game plan, our perceived game plan, what we wanted the Bears to do was to have all 3 of our running backs active to kind of attack that Texans interior defensive line. And we did try to run the ball, but I think they are overestimating the type of back that DeAndre Swift is. I think he's extremely talented, and I do think he's going to be great for the Bears offense, but I don't think he is the workhorse in this. I don't think he's a workhorse type of back. I think you saw it late. Khalil Herbert got a lot more usage, the only touchdown scorer of the game for us in the red zone. And Roschon Johnson is a back that, again, Joe and I discussed this, is a guy that can be that workhorse and can be brought in on passing situations for his pass blocking ability. He's great out of the backfield. He's great after contact. So we have 3 capable backs. We just didn't use them. And that's the part of me for Shane Waldron that's kind of alarming. The other aspect of that with Shane Waldron is the tight end usage. It got better this week. So again, Isaac, I think you bring up a great point that he's willing to adapt. It's still early. Cole Kmet saw a lot more usage in this game. Still not enough for my liking. You saw Gerald Everett on one of those last plays get a target as they were going down in that 2-minute drill to for a chance to win the game. Just a crucial drop. You can't have that in those situations. To me, I think Cole Kmet makes that catch and turns upfield and tries to get out of bounds, but just a crucial drop there by Everett. So overall, the only thing, I won't say the only thing, but the main thing for me with Shane Waldron right now is just the usage of certain players. And Joe, excuse me. Yeah, I think Joe was the one that asked that question. So Joe, I'll toss it to you.
I was the one who asked that question. Yeah, I asked that question because a lot of people are very worried. I'm honestly surprised you guys weren't higher. I figured you guys might be higher, but you guys are pretty conservative and want to look uh and be positive and hope they do well, which I was thinking the same way, but I'm gonna pump it up a bit higher just because we have seen this before. We have seen bad play calling with our quarterbacks before, and they don't develop. I'm gonna go with 9. Listen, screens, we saw them a lot last year. And Justin Fields, yeah, he has his issues. Uh, he he didn't have a great time reading defenses, and he can't attack the middle of the field. So that's he went to the screen game, which did not work. They did a bunch of screens this week. This week, a lot of them did not work. There was a screen to DeAndre Swift that Swift dropped, or I don't know if it was a technically drop or just a bad pass by Caleb. That might have worked. That almost worked. But they did a bunch of receiver screens and a bunch of tight end screens with Gerald Everett. I don't think Everett's a bad tight end, but I, like you said, I don't want to see him on the field more than Cole Kmet. And this week he wasn't. In week 1 he was, but they need to use Kmet more just throughout the game. He's a good blocker. Yeah, he had 3 bad blocks this week. One of them was on Daniel Hunter. I think he thought the play was going to be a run play, but it turned out to be a pass because he went to block him at the knees, and instead it was a pass rush, and it didn't work. Um, but Matt's a really good tight end, and yes, he was used a lot last year. The reason they brought in Everett was so he didn't get as many snaps, but you cannot use Everett more than Kmet. Kmet's one of the top 5, maybe definitely top 10, maybe top 5 tight ends in the NFL right now. We got to use Kmet more. We got to stop calling screen game. I like the slant stuff. I do like the deep balls, even though Caleb's missing them. And the run game, you got to figure out how to run the ball. You got to figure out how to run the ball. I don't care. Yes, I agree with you with DeAndre Swift. I said it before the season even started. I don't think DeAndre Swift. I think the reason DeAndre Swift had such a good season last year is because he was behind the best offensive line in football. I don't think he's that good of a running back. I wanted to be proven wrong. Doesn't look like I'm going to be proven wrong. I think that he's a good receiving back. I think if you get him in space, he could be a good running back. But the Bears don't have the offensive line apparently to get him in space. So use running backs like Khalil Herbert, who has shown he could be a good running back. Roschon Johnson, who we all like and think he can be, he's a good power back. Use those guys to open up space and then you could give the ball to Swift, and he could use his speed and shiftiness to make plays. But yeah, I'm worried about Waldron because if Waldron can't figure this out, this year is going to be terrible for Caleb, and we cannot have that again because we need to have something finally work at quarterback. And if Caleb fails, we're just never going to have a quarterback then. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Again, you bring up several great points. And again, I think it's a matter of patience with everything. It is alarming what we've seen so far, but I do think that we're still in a spot to where we have the chance to make these progressions on offense. And the defense has played great, so that's the silver lining, is that we're not seeing this repeat offender that we saw last year, in which Matt Eberflus was losing these close games because of the defense, and then the offense just couldn't overcome just the struggles with Justin Fields and the offensive line troubles last year. But we're seeing that the defense is standing strong in the second half of games in situations that we need them to. So that's the positive, that the defense has stood tall. But overall, offensively, I think it's important to remember that we're not going to be playing the Texans every week. I think the Titans were a lot better defensively than a lot of us expected to be. The Texans, just overall a great defense, great secondary, and great edge defenders. So next week we're going up, and we'll talk about this on our next episode as well. But just we're facing a less talented Colts team next week, so it's important to keep that in mind offensively. But yeah, do you guys have any other thoughts on the offense?
Yeah, I'll chime in really quick. The one thing I want to say to Bears fans is just to, relax, take a deep breath. We'll be fine. But for the Bears organization, they need to acknowledge their weaknesses. I think that's the most important thing that hasn't really been a thing in Chicago over the past couple seasons, is you guys, like, these people see what's going wrong, right? On film, on tape, like in person. They're seeing the weaknesses, they're seeing just like not the team isn't functioning right now on offense. And I feel like it starts from the coaching. The coaches need to acknowledge their weaknesses. Okay, guys, you know what? Here's what we did wrong. Here's how we can improve on it, right? And the players too, like it's not always the coach's fault. Sometimes it's just you got to have this mindset. Like I know that something's not working. Like especially if I'm on the offensive line, if I look back every 5 plays and I see Caleb Williams on the ground, something's not working. I need to figure something out. Hey, for these offensive line guys, maybe they could go up to the coach. Hey, coach, maybe something like this isn't working. Like, can we maybe try to adjust it or try to change this? Because it's so early in the season, and I just don't want to see this team give up on offense, or the defense starts to slow down, because the defense are playing their butts off. And then if they see the offense just like not doing anything, eventually it's probably going to get to them mentally, where it's like, okay, well, do I actually have to put 100% into this? Because the offense is not going to get any points or stuff like that. So for just, the whole team to just relax and you try to acknowledge what's going wrong and try to fix that would be the biggest thing that I want to say, for the team overall.
Joe, do you have any other thoughts? I have some thoughts on different rotations that could be had on the offensive line, but unless you have anything.
Not any more like thoughts. Like you could go with the offensive line thing, and we'll come back to me in this.
Okay, perfect. So I think it's been mentioned several times across this fan base, and Isaac, you kind of alluded to it earlier, I believe, with Matt Pryor potentially at right guard. But some people have theorized that perhaps the combination of Braxton Jones and Tevin Jenkins next to each other, that experiment kind of hasn't worked out. Along with Tevin Jenkins and Coleman Shelton, I think just the differing body types and the play styles some people have mentioned, and I don't know the exact specifics and who mentioned it, but there is an article out there, or a thread on Twitter, that really explains this in depth. But they say the differing play styles between Coleman Shelton and Tevin Jenkins is kind of the trouble we're seeing there on that left side of the interior. And then some people have also mentioned that it might be time to give Karan Amagaji a look at guard potentially. Now, again, I'm not a fan of this offensive line rotation that we've seen in years past, because in our experience, it just has not worked out at all. But when push comes to shove, there might be something to be had there. We spent a third round pick on Karan Amagaji. So if he's healthy enough, maybe give him a look somewhere on this offensive line. I believe he has guard experience in college. And getting Ryan Bates back here in a couple weeks will also be another big boost. So give me your guys' thoughts on a potential rotation check on the offensive line, if you think that's a good idea or a bad idea. Joe, I will start with you this time.
Uh, I think it's a fine. I mean, here's the thing: our offensive line isn't working. We need to do something. Do I think a rotation is the smartest idea? No, because that hurts the chemistry. But I just said it's not working. So try anything, throw anything at the wall. The rotation works, then fine. I don't think it will work, but nothing is working right now. We need something to work. We need this offensive line to protect Caleb Williams so he could have the time in the pocket to throw the ball clean. We need them to open up run lanes so Swift or Herbert or Roshan or even Vegas can run the ball and give us yardage on the ground. We need something to happen to make this offensive line better. So if it's rotation, sure. If it's take Nate Davis out and put Ryan Bates in when he gets healthy, sure. Or take Nate Davis out, put Matt Pryor in while Ryan Bates is out, then do that. Or if it's putting Tim Jenkins next to Darnell Wright instead of having Nate Davis there and putting someone else where Tim Jenkins is, do that. Whatever. Do something to make this line work. Or if it's, going off on people's practice squads and finding somebody who you really like and signing them, do that. Anything. We just need something to work. We need this offensive line to play better and be better.
I think you guys both bring up great points, especially with the offensive line. I don't know if you guys remember last season we had for a period of time Tevin Jenkins playing right guard next to Darnell Wright. And everyone, I remember on Twitter, everyone just raving about it because they have some kind of similar play styles and they were really complimenting each other well. I think if it was up to me, I would do something crazy. First of all, I would switch Tevin Jenkins to right guard because he did phenomenal in right guard. And as for left guard, either one of two options. One, we plug in Matt Pryor at left guard and see how that works. Or two, we plug in Bill Murray because Bill Murray had an excellent preseason and at left guard. Um, what you were talking about, Eli, with Kieran Amedenji, he I don't think we should plug him in a position where he's not familiar with, especially when he's a rookie and he's recovering from injury. I do think he needs to get an opportunity. I don't know when that will be, hopefully soon, but we'll see. He kind of has too long of arms to be a NFL guard. So I would like to just wait until he can potentially play at tackle, and we'll see about that. And then for Coleman Shelton, maybe just give Doug Kramer a shot for a game, see what happens. And if anything, if Doug Kramer doesn't do a good job, just plug in Shelton, put Shelton back in there, or just wait for Ryan Bates to be healthy to plug him into center. So then for next week against the Colts, my ideal starting lineup would be Braxton Jones at left tackle, Bill Murray or Matt Pryor left guard, and then Doug Kramer center, Tevin Jenkins right guard, Darnell Wright right tackle. And it's a completely different lineup. I get that, but it's something different, and it could work. So we'll see.
Yeah, I do agree that I think moving Tevin Jenkins to right guard alongside Darnell would be a great idea because we saw it benefit this Bears offense last year. And that's something that the Bears have really struggled with so far is those inside runs. Just there's no hole for the running back to go through, and Swift has had to bounce it out multiple times, which has resulted in lost yardage, which is something that just cannot happen for an offense with a rookie quarterback under center. So I would give it a complete go if I were the Bears, moving Tevin back to right guard because he really excelled with being next to Darnell Wright last season. So I think that's a great idea. We've kind of talked about the Bears offensive line struggles, the defense shining through. something that was an underrated part of last night that potentially had implications on this game into the late fourth quarter was the challenges thrown by Matt Eberflus and the Chicago Bears, two of which were pretty puzzling. And it's such a weird conversation to have, but it's also kind of an important one because is it Matt Eberflus making the decisions? Is it a personnel decision from upstairs from the Bears office to give him that call to throw those flags? So Joe, I'll start with you. What do you think of the challenge flag throwing for this Bears team last night and throughout the rest of the year?
There's two things. One, the challenges do not come from Eberflus. They come from upstairs. They have a team to help them do it. But what I will say is, Flus is down there on the field watching what's happening, and he can also look up and watch the replay on the big screen. He needs to do that because both of those challenges do not throw either of them. The Stefon Diggs one, it was a clear catch. You can see the pellets come up on the ground if you were standing down there on the field. Even if Flus didn't see it, there's got to be a coach or player down there that saw it and could tell Flus, even if the booth says to challenge it, not to challenge it and save the timeout. And the interception by Kyler Gordon, where the not interception, but it was a cool play that almost was an interception. It just the ball hit the ground. I don't know if that was more the booth or if that was more Gordon not chirping, but Gordon telling Flus, "Hey, I caught that ball. Challenge the play." And if the second thing is true, that hurts Gordon in the future because he's not going to be listened to when he says that because he already wasn't. That didn't happen. He was wrong. But B, also, again, like I said, watch that one's a little bit tougher to see because the ball hits the ground when he goes to catch it, and that doesn't always show on the replay. I guess on the big screen on the at the stadium, you kind of have to zoom in when you're watching it on the TV. If you can see it on the big screen, look at the big screen and see it. Either way, though, both of those calls, they might not have both those challenges might not have impacted the game a lot because the Bears still didn't look great. And it's just, you lose those timeouts. Sure, they would have been nice to have, but in the grand scheme of things in that game, it didn't matter. But if the Bears grand goal is to win the Super Bowl, win playoff games, uh, they cannot be making those mistakes, those challenging mistakes, because they need those timeouts when you get into late game situations. So whether it's Flus or the booth, if it's the booth, you got to fix it. If it's Flus, that's not good because we saw Flus have issues last year with coaching. And even if they're not the same and they're still there with a different aspect of the game, he needs to fix it or I don't know what. I mean, I'm not going to call for his job right now, but I don't want to call for his job at the end of the season either because I want this team to build something, but it might need to happen if it doesn't get any better.
So Isaac, any thoughts on these challenge flags being thrown that most of us think were pretty questionable last night?
Yeah, I'll be quick, but just two stupid challenges. I don't know why they would challenge that. And hopefully this is just something that we forget about and it never happens again. But like Joe brought up a good point. It really comes down to like whoever is deciding to throw these challenges, they need to, really be like, okay, either one, change whoever's calling those challenges, maybe give it to someone else, or two, if those players are telling Eberflus to challenge it, just maybe next time get a second opinion on it, maybe from upstairs or however it is. It shouldn't happen. This, really shouldn't be something that we should even be talking about on this podcast, but hopefully they fix it and, and everything is better in the future. But what do you think about it, Eli?
Yeah, I'm both with you guys. Two questionable decisions, and I agree. The one with the interception was a lot more understandable, but that first one was just clearly a catch. It was the easiest call in the world. Hopefully, that was not Matt Eberflus's judgment, and it just came from upstairs, and maybe they saw something he didn't. But hard to do when you're the one on the field. So just a super questionable call. And again, the interception is understandable somewhat, just because that could have turned the game around in favor of the Bears, but obviously it wasn't an interception. And hopefully the Bears coaching staff just learns from this experience throughout the rest of the year. Because in the past, I feel like they've been somewhat successful with this, and this is just a new kind of blip on the radar for this coaching staff. But yeah, it was just two kind of weird red flags there. But while we're on the subject of flags and penalties, I think a big thing that happened last night was the huge scuffle, which again, the huge scuffle that happened last night resulted in a Bears player just being punched in the face and absolutely nothing happened. And along with several other penalties that should have been thrown in that whole process. But the positive on that aspect was the Bears offensive line coming to rush in defense of Caleb Williams, which we've seen in the past has just not happened with this Bears squad. So it speaks volumes to what this team thinks of Caleb Williams and wants to go to bat for him. But Joe, I'll ask you first. What were your thoughts on this huge scuffle, and what are some of the thoughts you have on, if any, on the penalties that should have been thrown, or just your opinion on the whole situation in general?
Okay. Well, I'll get to that in a second. I do want to throw a stat at you guys with challenge flags. Eberflus, in his time as head coach, he's thrown 7 flags. He's only gotten 2 correct. So if that tells you anything, that's not a good thing.
Excuse me, I take that back. Then I had thought in the past he had done pretty well, but that's a pretty glaring stat there. Thanks, Joe. I did not know that.
Yeah, I heard that today. I was like, oh, that's not good. But as far as the penalties in this game went, yes, there should have been a penalty thrown on Alshire when he, punched Roschon Johnson in the face, and Roschon wasn't even in the game. Like, that should have been a flag. He should have been kicked out. I'm surprised he hasn't been fined yet. Like, what are we doing, NFL? Fine the dude. He deserves to be fined for that. Like, come on. Each team had penalties, like a lot of penalties. I think Houston had 12 and the Bears had 10. Like, that's just sloppy football. You can't do that. A lot of the Bears penalties were pre-snap penalties. I think Darnold Wright had 2 or 3 false starts, which you can't see. Like, you can't have that. I don't know. For the second year, you need to understand. I know it's again a new coordinator and stuff, but you need to understand cadences, and it's a new quarterback. But understand the cadence, understand the play. I get you're going against one of the best. Even if you're going against Will Anderson, he's an ascending star. But if you're going against Daniel Hunter, he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So you're gonna have jitters, but like, just wait. You want to get a jump, don't jump too early. Just wait. But yeah, overall, too many penalties for the Bears. I think there should have. I think the refs definitely missed a couple penalties. Like, you can debate all you want on the 2 Caleb Williams sideline hits. Yeah, he was inbounds. One of them, the Alshire one. He was clearly going out of bounds. I feel like that should have been a penalty, and then Alshire should have gotten ejected for punching Roschon Johnson. The other one, again, that's close. That's close. That's not as close as the Alshire one. That was close. I mean, you're not always going to get those calls. As a rookie, you're not going to get those calls. But the Bears, the past couple seasons, historically have not gotten those calls with Justin Fields. I hope it changes with Caleb, but who knows at this point. But yeah, overall, too many penalties and too many missed penalties too.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Joe on pretty much everything. It was kind of ridiculous watching all the false starts we had on offense, especially with how bad the offensive line was playing. Just to have those false starts on top of it was pretty infuriating. But yeah, just I don't know why we had all these penalties. And again, Shire should have been kicked out or fined or flagged or something. Just to have nothing happen was pretty ridiculous. But hopefully in the future they fix that, and we'll see. What do you think, Eli? What do you think about everything that went on?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. There should have been at least a flag thrown on that whole ordeal on either team, I guess. But It seems like the officials were just turning a blind eye, which sometimes you can appreciate, but when a dude that's not even in the game, as Joe kind of mentioned, gets decked in the face. Like Roshan's a nice guy too. So it was just like, what is going on? Like, dude just got decked. It was such an indication of how the Bears night went for something like that to happen. And just overall something so Bears that would happen to us for a situation like that to occur with no flags being thrown. But as Joe kind of mentioned as well, just a sloppy football game by both teams. But to kind of wrap up the overall discussion of this matchup, sloppy football is a great way to put it. But again, as we've kind of reiterated throughout this episode, to lose to a Super Bowl contending team by a score of 16-10 on a day where the offense just could not get anything going.
19-13.
19-13. Yeah, there you go. So 19-13 for that matchup. I think it kind of gives you a good indicator that the Bears are right there with a lot of things. It's just we have to clean up some of the mistakes. We have to get better along the offensive line. And the play calling just has to improve along with usage and everything we've mentioned throughout this episode. But I personally do think that the Bears are right there on the cusp of doing something special. And I think these next few matchups kind of give us a good chance to get our feet wet and kind of get a good base beneath this young offense and kind of kickstart ourselves into getting a good record as we get into the more difficult part of our schedule come October and into November. So that's kind of my thoughts, unless you guys have anything else. All right.
Good.
Yeah.
I think that will do it then. You can catch us on Thursday. We will record for our pregame show previewing the matchup against the Indianapolis Colts this week. Should be a winnable stretch of games here for the Bears coming up, but we will preview all of that for the Colts matchup against the Chicago Bears there on Sunday. For myself, Eli Grimes, Joe Grassano, and Isaac, here on the Bear Down Buzz podcast. We will catch you next week.